I want to welcome you tonight to Charlotte Wildlife Stewards, our monthly educational program. And we are the Charlotte chapter of the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. And up here on the screen, you'll see our website, which actually right now is under construction. We had some issues with the old one. We're building a new one, and hopefully in a couple weeks it will be up. So the best way to really know what's going on with us for right now is follow us on Facebook and Instagram. And we also have a Gmail account. If you have any questions, concerns, you want to volunteer with us, you want to get on our newsletter, whatever, you can write to us at that email and we will get back with you. Okay, so, all right. So our mission is to create, protect, and preserve wildlife habitat through education, like tonight, engagement, and enjoyment. And we have lots of different things that we do to meet those goals, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. This is a picture from Chantilly Wildlife Sanctuary, and we've done some work there with stormwater and enhancing some of the habitat that's there. So one thing I want to point out to y'all is the National Wildlife Federation has a program called Gardening for Wildlife, and this is the 50th anniversary, the 50th year that they've had that, the Gardening for Wildlife and the certification of wildlife habitats. May is the Gardening for Wildlife month. You can, and they're running this special sweepstakes. So what you can do is, if you can actually find this on their website online, but if you click on that link and you sign up for their newsletter, they'll enter you into a sweepstakes to win. That looks like a great prize package there. The other thing, from May 1st through June 30th, you receive 20% off on your certification, which normally costs $20. So you would get 20% off that. And then if you buy a sign to put in your yard to help your neighbors know what's going on, then you get 20% off of that. So like I said, you can find this information on their website, and it's also, I get it in an email. It's great to sign up for that. But I want to brag a little bit on Charlotte. So Charlotte is registered, Charlotte has been certified as a wildlife community since 2015. And to do that, you have to have a certain number of wildlife habitats that are certified, and you have to have outreach and education, a certain amount of that every year. And we've maintained that certification every year. So these are a couple numbers that I just found out today, is that North Carolina has the fourth highest number of certified wildlife habitats in the country. So we're only behind California, Florida, and Texas. And those are big states. So we're doing well. And then in our county, we're the 8th county in the ranking of all counties across the country. And we have over 1,620 certified wildlife habitats in Mecklenburg County. So I think that's pretty awesome, something to be proud of. And if you're not certified as a habitat, we'll talk about that. So what you need are the elements that are going to help wildlife, and they need the same things we need. They need food, whether it's in a natural form, like from an oak tree, or you could put up supplemental feeders or throw out peanuts for squirrels or anything like that. The same thing with water, a natural source or something that you put in. A bird bath, just a saucer, butterfly puddler, whatever. They need shelter from elements, from the weather like we do, and from predators like I hope we don't need, and also places to raise their young. And those, you know, your trees, your shrubbery, brush piles, things like that. And most of us probably have those in our yard anyway. And we also, they also want you to use sustainable practices, which basically means don't use anything that has the word "side" in it. No, no herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, because those don't, the herbicides and the fungicides don't just affect, the plants and the fungus, they will also affect the wildlife, and you'll get the runoff and all that. Leave your leaves, right? You can rake them off your lawn, or your play area if you need to, but put them up under your trees. Get a rain barrel. That's kind of a fun thing to do, to collect that rainwater off your roof. And there are other suggestions of what you can do to be sustainable in what you're doing. And what we're trying to do actually is kind of help let the ecology get back to where it balances itself without a lot of our intervention. We can do that by using native plants. That's a great way to do it. And and you'll see, the insects will come in, but most of them are the good guys, and they sort of balance out. The predatory insects take care of the non-predatory insects, and it works out. So one of the things we do is we connect people with nature. And these are just some pictures of events that we've had. We have an I Spy nature walk where Alden has led it before. And we just go out usually to one of the nature preserves and we just go see what we can find. You never know what's going to be out there from one day to the next. We've done some creek cleanup. This is a creek cleanup. That's a headless baby doll they found. So you never know what kind of weird stuff you're going to find. But we got 635 pounds out of Briar Creek that day. And that's another creek cleanup we did. We got 800 pounds of trash out of a creek. It's just amazing what you find in there. This was a hawk program, program about hawks that we had here earlier this year. Here we are at Chantilly putting up some birdhouses. Kids in Nature Day over there, which is October 1st. So that'll be something, y'all with little ones, keep that in mind. That's a fun day of all hands-on activity related to nature. And then this is a sign we put up at Chantilly over by their wetlands showing what's living over there. So that's just an example of how we try to get people connected, because you've got to have that connection in order to care about it, in order to do something about it. And then a couple things we have coming up on this coming Sunday. There's NODA is celebrating Arbor Day, and we will have a table there where we'll be highlighting the gardening for wildlife. So if you're in that area, stop by. It'll be at Divine Barrel Brewing. And then on April 22nd, for our Earth Day celebration, we're going to be removing invasives at Chantilly. We do have the sign up is full for that, but I just thought I'd point that out as one of the ways that we kind of try to protect habitat. So we want to get more of the native plants, get rid of those invasives so the native plants will have a place to grow. Our May program, which is the last one of this for this year, will be about tree surveys that the city does. And so Natasha Warren will be here to talk to us about that. So that'll be here May 11th. I think that's the right date. At 7, well, it's the second Tuesday of the month, if that's not the right date. But then on May 20th, we're going to actually go out and do a survey. And I'm waiting on a little more information from Natasha, and I will be doing a sign up for that. So if you're interested in doing that, we're actually going to go to a neighborhood and survey the trees. And we'll learn how to do that, learn more about that at our May program. And then the other thing I want to highlight is Wild on the Water. So we are a nonprofit and we run totally on donations. And those are what help us to be able to do what we do. And this is a kayaking and canoeing event up on Mountain Island Lake, and it's a whole lot of fun. We go out, well, let me back up. Parks and Rec does have some kayaks and canoes that are available for us to use. Other people bring their own, but there's a limited number. So if you want to do this, you need to go ahead and sign up. And we paddle out to an osprey nest, and a naturalist named Laura Domingo, who is just amazing. She is going to be talking about the ospreys, the other wildlife out there, the plant life. And then we'll paddle into a cove that's got water lilies in it. It's really cool. When we come back, we'll have lunch that the Common Market provides, and we'll have a raffle of some really fun prizes. And that'll wrap up the day. We'll be done, by 12:30, 1 o'clock or whatever. So the best way to find the information on that, to sign up, is on our Facebook page. I didn't create a Facebook event because we don't want people to say in the event they're coming that think that's registration. It's not. So there's a post on there with the registration link. There's also a Wild on the Water Facebook page. So if you look for either one of those, you'll find it. So I hope you come, because it's a lot of fun. And then what you all came for tonight is Over the Moon for Opossums with Pam Pizzozzo. She loves opossums. So And before we move to that, I do want to recognize our leadership team. So if y'all would stand, these folks make what we do happen. Alden is I'm always happy when Alden's here because he does, yeah. Anyway, these folks really add a lot and have helped this past year just be really fantastic. So anyway, so Pam is our secretary and she has a passion for opossums and other wildlife. So I will let you introduce yourself.
So today's, the idea for the talk actually starts pretty far away from Charlotte, North Carolina, in Homosassa Springs, Florida. A few years ago, I went to Homosassa Springs, Florida, to Homosassa Springs Wildlife Park. It's a state park, pretty interesting place that is owned by the state of Florida and run by the Department of Natural Resources. And the reason this is such a special place is because it is the home to manatees that are rehabilitated by DNR. Homosassa Springs was built, I think, in the 1950s as a private zoological park. And so you have, various exhibits around. And I think at one point they even filmed Tarzan movies at Homosassa Springs. But today it's owned by the state of Florida. It's used and it's run by DNR. And it's used exclusively for native wildlife rehabilitation. And so that's why the manatees are there, who are often, hit by boat propellers. It also, interestingly, is the home of Lucifer the hippopotamus.
For folks who are joining us virtually, just please know we're going to, for ease of technical reasons, we're going to keep it in presenter mode, unfortunately.
That's Donna's.
No, that's mine.
Okay.
Yeah, but to advance. Just hit here.
Or maybe this one. Yeah.
Okay.
Just right. And then left is back.
All right. So I happened to take a trip to Homosassa Springs Wildlife Park where where they have manatees that are being rehabbed. They have a Lucifer the hippo who remains from the days when it was a private zoo, is the only non-native organism who still resides at Homosassa Springs. This hippo was so important to the people of Homosassa Springs because it had been there so long that they voted to make Lucifer an honorary citizen. So Lucifer is an honorary citizen of Florida, actually. But at Homosassa Springs, I got to see a talk about opossums. And that's when my heart started to warm towards opossums because I didn't really know anything about them. How many of you have seen an opossum out there in nature? How, in what regard? Have you seen it maybe walking, or did you see it maybe
Ran across my foot.
Ran across your foot? Okay, so maybe you've seen one hit by a car, maybe, or
my mother-in-law woke up, there's one in bed with her in Wilmington, North Carolina.
one in bed with her. Well, that's interesting. That's interesting. Has anybody encountered an opossum that might have showed its mouth with all of its teeth? Okay, and so is that a little bit scary, all the teeth, kind of not scary for you? Well, I think that once I saw this talk with the opossums, I got over my sort of fear of all those teeth. And now we know that all those teeth are there to help the opossum because it's an omnivore and it can eat almost anything. And so it needs all those 50 teeth in its mouth to do that. But they're very, very sweet animals, very cuddly, very warm, and they're very short-lived, and they sort of touched my heart. And so I always sort of felt for them because they are urban wildlife. They do live amongst us, and they often are hit by cars. I started to find them more and more, see them around, and really felt for their plight. And so last summer, I took a wildlife rehab class to learn how to rehab opossums over in Greenville, South Carolina, where I was living at the time. And so then I moved to Charlotte, and my goal would be to do the same thing here and get involved with wildlife rehab. And so that's why I asked Barbara to join us today so she could speak a little bit to that. Maybe some of you would like to help with wildlife rehab efforts, especially with urban wildlife. There's so many challenges for them in the urban landscape. So being a wildlife rehabber is really a wonderful thing to help them where we can. So opossums, for those of you who are interested in evolution and phylogeny, are a type of mammal. They're chordates, or they're in phylum Chordata, which, like us, they have a backbone. They're mammals like us. So what do we know about mammals? What are the characteristics of mammals? They're warm-blooded. What else? They bear their young live, right? So the live of mammals are born young and not in an egg, or they don't hatch, right? They don't hatch outside of the mother. What else do we know about mammals? What else are criteria or characteristics of mammals? They nurse, that's right. They have some sort of way to deliver milk to the young. They have hair. They have claws oftentimes, or some sort of nail. Opossums are in a special class of mammals. They're in a subclass called metatherians, which means they're marsupial mammals. So they're very different from us. We are considered eutherian mammals. So we're on a different sort of lineage evolutionarily of mammals. And then they're in the order Didelphimorphia. So there are 250 species of marsupial mammals, and marsupial mammals evolved in the southern hemisphere a long time ago, about 140 million years ago, when the continental land masses of South America and Central America and Australia and New Guinea were connected. And so they are considered to be New World organisms, meaning you do not find marsupials in Asia, and you do not find them in Europe, you do not find them in Africa. Most of the world's marsupials are actually living, about 200 of the 250 species live in Australia, New Zealand, and New Guinea. So just a small portion of the marsupial mammals on Earth live in the Americas. There are 127 species of opossums, but only one species of opossum lives in North America, Canada, and Central America and the United States, and that is the Virginia opossum. And that is Deldephis virginiana. So if you've seen an opossum, you've seen the Virginia opossum, because it's the only one, and it's the only marsupial that lives in North America. So pretty special. So mammals evolved from reptiles. How many of you knew that? So our oldest cousins are actually reptiles. And along the lineage, the time period of evolution when mammals evolved, the first type of mammal that evolves from reptiles are actually monotremes. Monotremes are egg-laying mammals. So there are a group of mammals, there's actually 2 species today on the planet that still exist that lay eggs. 2 egg-laying species of mammals. One is the duck-billed platypus, and one is the spiny echidna. And then as evolution progressed, marsupial mammals evolved. And so marsupial mammals evolved about 140 or so million years ago. And then about 20 million years later, you have eutherian or placental mammals, which we are, that evolve. And so if you like evolution, which is where one of my passions is evolution. So all the way back down in here in the age of the reptiles, age of the dinosaurs, when the earth was dominated by dinosaurs, mammals were first evolving. So that goes all the way back to about 250 million years ago. And at that point, mammals were small. They were about the size of lizards. And mammals evolved, marsupial mammals, this was sort of the era when you first had these egg-laying mammals that were sort of reptilian in a lot of their characteristics. But marsupial mammals start to evolve around here about 140 million years ago. Here is when placental mammals start to evolve. And then this becomes the age of the mammals. Mammals, this is right here where pink turns to green. That's when the dinosaurs went extinct with the big asteroid implosion on the planet. So that's the Cretaceous extinction period 65 million years ago, which gave rise to the age of the mammals. And so all the way up here, 20 million years ago, is when opossums start to evolve. And so today, there are still 2 species of egg-laying mammals, monotremes. There are a group of marsupial mammals, of which our opossums are a part of that group. But most of the world's mammals today are placental mammals. And so they they bring their young to full term in a series of membranous sacs called a placenta. And that is one of the big differences between marsupial and placental mammals, which we'll talk about in a second. So the Virginia opossum, which is the opossum that you've seen and that sort of stole my heart when I saw it in this, learned about it in this talk at Homosassa Springs so many years ago, they occupy woodlands. And so they're perfect for North Carolina, and you'll find them all the way up into Canada. So they like deciduous forests. They also like marshes. They like to, they're semi-arboreal, so they can live up in trees. They can also burrow down. So sometimes you'll find them burrowing. They don't make burrows themselves, but they will occupy other burrows or excavate out other burrows that they find. They are considered to be sort of opportunistic generalists. So they don't have specific habitat requirements, which make them the ideal urban wildlife. You'll find them living in the boles of trees. You'll find them up in the trees. You'll find them even burrowing under sheds or people's houses. You'll find them in between your fences. They are mostly solitary. They're mostly nocturnal, and they're nomadic. So they don't create a permanent nest and stay there. They sort of move around as they're looking for food. And also, which is pretty characteristic of marsupials, they don't live in groups. They don't have very static social structures in their groups. And so they may have a family-sized burrow, family members that occupy a burrow for some time until they sort of all move on and, you know, go on their separate ways. And so they're sort of the perfect organism to live amongst humans in urban settings. They're also opportunistic omnivores. So we're going to look inside the skull of an opossum in a few minutes, but they have a lot of teeth. 50 teeth is actually a lot of teeth for a pretty small skull. And they have very large canines, which help them to rip and tear meat or flesh, but they can also grind. They can eat things as small as seeds, insects. They're one of the important functions of opossums in urban neighborhoods is they'll eat ticks and other insects. So they're great to have around as they keep down pests. But they can also forage eggs from nests. They can eat reptiles and amphibians. They can eat plant material. They can eat flowers. And they can even eat garbage, and they can eat detritus. So sometimes their nose, they see they have a very long nose, will lead them to find carrion, maybe other organisms hit by cars on roads, and that carries them out into the streets where they themselves can end up getting in harm's way. So they can eat a lot of different things that are found in our urban neighborhoods. Their anatomy is pretty interesting. They have some scutes, which are raised thick scales, almost like armadillos or pangolins, which are other mammals. And those areas are on their tails and also on their feet. So the tail and the feet are not covered by any hair. The tail is a prehensile tail, which allows them to hang from branches and allows them to gather things. And this is really a pretty neat, wildlife video that captured opossums using their tail. You can see there, she's got leaves gathered in her tail that she's taking into her burrow to make her nest. That was gathered on a DNR camera somewhere. The long nose is long and powerful with lots of sensory whiskers around the nose. So they have a very powerful sense of smell. This with the mouth open shows you the many teeth that they have, which they'll bare in a situation where they're frightened by predators. So they might hiss and engage in, clicking or growling noises to try to look a little bit fierce. But you can see in there, the more teeth they have of different shapes and sizes, that's what allows them to eat, all the different things that they can eat. And you can see those teeth here with the skull. You can see that they have a very thin brain case and a very prominent ridge down the center of the skull, which is called the sagittal crest. One difference between placental mammals and eutherian mammals, or placental mammals, eutherian mammals, and marsupial mammals is that placental mammals have a more well-developed brain, a more complex brain. The connections within the brain are, there are more connections. And so placental mammals are thought to be more intelligent than marsupial mammals. And you can see that in the size of the brain case as well. The brain case of the opossum is rather narrow compared to some of these other placental mammals that we'll see in a moment. Also, they have, you can see there the hind foot of the opossum. So they have 5 digits on the forelimbs and 5 digits on the hind limbs, but on the hind limbs, the 5th digit is an opposable digit, like a thumb. And so that allows them to grab onto things, allows them to climb, it allows them to have a lot of dexterity, which also enables them to live very well in our urban environments. And here you can see the footprint of the fore and hind, the front limb and hind limb of the opossum. One of the most marked differences between placental mammals and marsupial mammals is, of course, their reproductive biology. So opossums are very short-lived. They only live about 1 to 2 years, maybe 3. So that's very, very short lifespan. They can live, I understand, up to 6 years in captivity. Is that right, Barbara, with the opossums that you've worked with? About 6 years in captivity. They typically, once they become reproductively mature, which is within the year, within their first year, they can have 2 litters of pups. And marsupials have a partial placenta. They do have a membranous sac in which the young develop. And they can develop 18 to 25 young or pups, but they only have a gestation period of about 12 days. So after 12 days, they're very undeveloped, just like this, almost the size of jelly beans. And the undeveloped pups start to crawl out of that partial placenta and make their way into the sac or pouch of the mother. Now this pouch, you can see the pouch there. It's sort of a flap of skin called a marsupium. And inside of the marsupium are 13 nipples. Even though they might have 18 up to 25 pups, there are only 13 nipples. And so only 13 of those pups will be able to survive. Once they crawl into the marsupium, they must attach to a nipple, and they will continue to stay there and nurse until they're ready to leave the mother. And so if there are any more than 13, those pups will not survive. But because they produce so many young and they're so short-lived, ecologically, we call this an R-selected species. So sort of their life history trait is to be short-lived and to reproduce often and a lot, sort of their life strategy, and to be very diverse and generalist, and be able to enter into almost any habitat and survive there. They have not very picky needs as far as habitat. But over time, the pups, which then will become joeys, develop in the mother's pouch, and they will from time to time get up out and ride on her back, sort of holding on to her. Now, the way that marsupials are, they don't have these strong sort of social structures that placental mammals have. And once in a while, those babies will fall off of the mother. She might not notice. And so the babies may be something that you encounter, and Barbara can speak to that a little bit. If you encounter babies, what to do. Without their mother, they won't survive. But if you do find a baby opossum without its mother, and if we get it to the right situation, we might be able to save it through wildlife rehab efforts. As far as their behaviors, to play possum, this may be how you've seen an opossum in the past, maybe playing dead, where it may not actually be dead. Possums can have a strong physiological response where they actually go unconscious, where they have a great state of fear. Their mouth will open, they'll start to produce saliva around the mouth, and they can sort of be in this stunned state as if to play dead to ward off predators. And they'll start to exude out of the anal glands a foul smelling odor to try to protect themselves from predators. So that's a response to protect themselves. They also might engage in sort of baring their teeth, a clicking or a growling sound, or even a hissing sound when startled by a potential predator. They also are extremely cuddly and almost sort of like the relationship that you have with very sweet animals, like with one of your pets. So I'll let Barbara talk a little bit about that as she's worked with them more closely. Possum rehabilitation, because they are urban wildlife, they're often around us and often prey to dogs and cats or getting hit by cars. Carolina Wildlife Conservation Center gave me a little bit of data. Since 2019, they've rescued 900 possums. And just in 2022, there are 400 possums that they've rehabbed there. The main causes were hit by cars and cat and dog attacks. And the majority of what they rehab there are babies. If you discover an adult, one of the things that they recommend, and it's either playing dead or it is dead, is to check the pouch to see if there are babies around, or if there are babies that might have fallen off the mother. To gather up the babies if you find them, to keep them in a warm environment, maybe with a low heat, go ahead.
How small are can they be rehabilitated?
Well, I was attended this class. These are some of the pictures from the class, and we had some that were really, really, really small. I don't know what the age would be. Can you speak to that, Barbara? What age they can be rehabilitated?
The youngest I've been able to make 10 grams and above. Anything under that is too difficult because they can't suckle. That's the problem. If they can't suckle at all, you have to put a tube down into their stomach and feed them.
Yeah.
They don't suck on to get milk. Mom's body automatically pumps it into them. So that's why they're so difficult for anybody. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, I raised a baby squirrel. I bottle fed it." You can't do that with opossums.
That's right. So this was the rehab class I took, and they had a tiny little tube that they were putting into the opossums' mouths at a young age. At some point you can feed them with a syringe, right?
It's not recommended.
Okay, so they recommend.
They usually don't eat very well that way.
Uh-huh.
They usually go from tube feeding right to lapping.
Okay. So I put together a list of Charlotte area wildlife rehabilitation resources. There are many organizations here in the Charlotte area, and we are on the border between North Carolina and South Carolina. Depending on where you are and what organism you find, whether it's a mammal, an opossum, or a bird, there's all sorts of wildlife groups here. So I put together a list of resources if you happen to find wildlife in need, what to do if you find injured wildlife, and then also if you're interested in becoming a wildlife rehabilitator. In North Carolina and South Carolina, there are different requirements. In South Carolina, you do not have to be licensed. You can join a club, you can take a training like I did, and then you can be, once you've taken a class, you're sort of certified and you can join in the efforts, and you're sort of taught by other people in the group. So this was a class at Wildlife Rehab of Greenville that I took. In North Carolina, it's very different. You have to be licensed. You have to go through a training program. So would anyone like this resource page to take with them? Sure. And then Barbara, would you come up and speak more about since Barbara is actually a North Carolina certified opossum wildlife rehabber with Animal Rehabilitators of the Carolinas. She can speak to you a little bit more since she's handled them more than I have.
So as I was saying before, opossums are hard for the public to help with in any way because of the way the babies need to be fed with a tube. But always, I'm amazed constantly at how many people know to check a possum they see on the side of the road and check for a pouch and babies. Sometimes when the dog grabs it, dogs shake and the babies go flying and are scattered all over. You can hear them calling mom. They do a psst, psst, psst kind of sound. That's the babies calling their mom. And like was said earlier, when they fall off, sometimes mom will go under a low branch and who's ever on the back gets knocked off. Mom doesn't come back. Mom doesn't look for them. She just keeps right on walking. So if they can't catch up to her quick, they're on their own. So a lot of times people find babies that way also. When you find one, whether it's an adult or a baby, it's good to keep a towel in your car. If you just throw a towel over and scoop it up that way. Possums do like to show you their mouth and all their teeth to scare you. They usually don't bite. Opossums are one of the animals that I am not afraid to walk up to an adult and pick it up. You have to move slow. Their eyesight is terrible, but their hearing and their sense of smell is perfect. So they may not see you very well, but they know where you are just by the smell and the sound. But if you put a towel over them and pick them up slowly, moving slowly, being quiet, you can pick up a wild adult possum very easily. Yes?
How large are they when they can be on their own?
Can you please repeat the question and see if everyone online can hear?
Oh, when they can be released after rehab? Is that what you mean?
How big are they when they leave the mother?
Well, because mom is training them, they leave mom early. They can anywhere from, I'd say 2-3 months on. When we get them into rehab, they're one of the longest animals to rehab, depending on what age you get them at. If you get them at the little teeny tiny stage, you're gonna have it probably 3-4 months. But we usually let them go around 2 pounds. So if you get in what we call pinkies, these little tiny babies, you're gonna have it for a while because that thing only weighs about 12 grams and you have to wait till it gets up to 2 pounds. So it takes a while, but they do start gaining weight a lot. And they're probably around 4 months old, but they weigh at least 2 pounds to let them go because we're not teaching them all the things their mom does. They're out exploring with mom since a very little age. They're learning a lot of stuff that we take longer to teach them. So we want to give them the best chance they have out in the wild. That's why we wind up keeping them longer than if they were with their mother. Yes.
So is that a trait just for opossums, or is it eyesight, bad eyesight, or is it also for possums and other marsupials?
That's just for opossums. We don't have possums in this.
They're only central.
Yeah, Australia. We have the opossum, the Virginia possum. But yeah, that's mostly for just the opossums. Squirrels have. That's interesting. I don't know. That is interesting. That's why a lot of times too, when we rehab, if something happens to a female with her tail, unless she has enough tail where she can gather and make nests with, she's not allowed to be released because she has no way to make a nest for the babies. And they don't stay in a nest very long. They come and go all the time, but she has to be able to use her tail to make a nest.
So let's see, they are great eaters once they start on their own. And we have to watch because they're very susceptible to a condition called metabolic bone disease. If they're not fed properly, they need a lot of extra calcium, which in the wild they get from eating bones and different things like that, beetles, all stuff. So if a person tries raising one and doesn't feed it the proper diet, it gets metabolic bone disease, which would kind of be like a person getting rickets. It's very painful to them, and most times they die from it. We get them in, unfortunately, after someone has tried, and then all of a sudden the animal's not doing good, and they call a rehabber, but they've already done the damage. Sometimes we can turn it around if we get it early enough, but a lot of times we can't, and the poor thing needs to be euthanized. I don't know why people feed crazy foods to wildlife without doing some kind of research, but it would curl your hair, some of the things we're told people feed. Same thing with milk. I don't know why everybody wants to give a wild animal cow's milk. Cow's milk is the worst thing you could give a wild animal. And lettuce. All rabbits get lettuce. Iceberg lettuce is no good for an animal, especially rabbits. It causes diarrhea, and then the diarrhea will deplete the body and wind up killing the baby. So you have to be careful with these things. When you get an animal, you shouldn't feed it anyway. Most times when you find an animal, it's been without its mother for a while. So it's usually dehydrated. And a dehydrated animal, if you feed it, the body can't break down the food or the formula. So you're having the animal waste the little bit of energy it still has, trying to break down the formula, and it winds up dying. So that's why we say don't ever feed it. Most times it's the wrong thing. And if the animal's dehydrated, you're going to do more harm than good.
Let's talk about their behaviors a little bit as you're freezing them. You know, how do they spend their day? Are they mostly sleeping? Are they curious?
No, well, the babies are in and out.
Sorry, Barbara, do you mind repeating the question? Because I
Sorry.
can't hear what the audience is asking.
Okay, they will. I was asked how the possums spend their day in captivity while they're being rehabbed. And they are, when they're real little, I personally keep them in a plastic tote with a heat source underneath. But then as they get bigger, they start eating on their own. They need to be able to climb to start building up the muscles. So I move them to a cage so they can climb up and down the cage. You put tree limbs in there for them to climb on. They usually start sleeping during the day as they get a little older, and then they come out at night. And at night is when they do the most feeding too. I always keep water and some food in their cage during the day, but I give them the most at night. And that's when everybody comes out and eats and drinks. Never pick up an opossum by its tail. Its tail is a continuation of its spine. You can dislocate the spine on it, and you can injure it greatly. So never pick up an opossum by the tail if you see it. I love that little thing. They wrap it right around you as you hold them by their body and everything. They're very cute. They're very cute.
And when you release them, where do you, in the group I went with, they would try to find a farm or someone with a lot of land.
Yes.
Keep them out of urban environments.
When it comes time to release them, we try and release them in a very wooded area and also somewhere that has a water source. They use a lot of water. They also like to use water for their toilet. So we try to always near a lake, near a stream that doesn't dry up in the summer, somewhere like that. So like I said, if you find one, the best thing to do is to scoop it up. If you find babies, adults are different. You got to be very careful handling adults. Babies are easier, you know, scoop it up, throw a towel over it, scoop it up, put it in a box, keep it in a warm, quiet, dark place until you can find help for it. They're amazing animals. When you find wildlife, I know that's what everybody has are cat carriers, whether you use it for a cat or a dog. They're wonderful, but keep in mind, if you find a little bunny and you put it in there, their natural predators are cats. So you're stressing out this rabbit now because it's in a cat carrier that smells like its predator. Like, so it's stressing out more. You have to be careful of that. A plastic bin, a plastic cardboard box, something you can close but put holes in so it can breathe, and get it to a rehabber. The sooner you get it to a rehabber, the better for the animal. Some of them are injured. They need help quick. They're dehydrated, they're malnourished. So we get them, oh yeah, it's Wednesday. Yeah, I found it on Sunday. By the time we get it, the poor little thing is in dire straits. So the sooner you can get help for it, the better.
Barbara, could you address when you should not scoop up wildlife babies?
Well, if it's an animal that's acting funny, and not just opossums, but if you see an animal that's acting funny and it's the kind that usually or has the ability to carry rabies, you should not scoop it up. Skunks, raccoons, bats, things like that, you have to be very careful of. You need thick gloves if you're going to do this, and also a towel. It's always better to have more layers in between you. And the same thing, throw the towel over it, scoop it up, and put it in a container right away. Be very careful with any animal that can carry rabies. Opossums do not carry the virus like regular animals do, the raccoons and fox and things like that, because their body temperature is lower than normal mammals. It's usually between 90 and 99. But if the opossum is sick, has an infection, and it's got a fever, it can then carry rabies. But as a general rule, they don't harbor the virus. Any other questions? Yes.
I had a friend that saw a sick raccoon that she picked up, took to her vet. If I'd seen the picture of it earlier, I told her not to touch it. It did have rabies, and the vaccines are something like $20,000.
Yeah, the vaccines for a post-exposed animal, if you need the vaccine because you were exposed to rabies, they are very expensive. Insurance may and may not cover it, so that gets tricky. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a friend who has lived in his house and is trying to figure out how
Oh, that's great.
we have a knock on his house.
Yes, they love going into dark, quiet places, under houses, under sheds, things like that. The way to get any wildlife to move is to annoy it. It doesn't want to be bothered by people. It likes the dark, quiet spots. So if you put work lights, got the spotlights, flashlights, work lights, anything like that, turn it on at night, keep it bright as you can. If you have a radio, put a radio on, the noise, you will annoy it and it will move. Same thing people call all the time, they have animals in their attic. It's usually a raccoon or a squirrel. Opossums don't usually work that hard or go up that high. Same thing, put the lights on up there. Find out which corner they're in, take a work light, shine it in that corner. You have to find out how it's coming in, and once it's out, close up the hole, otherwise it'll just come back once you get it dark and quiet again. Critter removal companies, usually by law, if they remove it from your property, they have to kill it. So that's not fair. You can get it to move, plus it's very expensive. You can get it to move on your own just by annoying it. Open the shed door, leave the shed door open, put the lights on, a light on in there, the animal will leave. It doesn't want you bothering it, so it won't hang around.
And what if after it has babies and they're all grown, will she leave?
Yes, because they all will leave. No, nope, they don't hang around. They don't hang around. Opossums keep moving. They travel. They're travelers. Yes. Yes. So yes, there are lots of good resources on here. The North Carolina NCWF.org is also a good resource to find. You can go on there and you can pull up a list of all licensed rehabbers in North Carolina. South Carolina has the SCDNR, South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. You can get a full list of rehabbers there. There's also another very good resource. It's animalhelpnow.org. When you pull that up, it'll ask your permission to use your location. As long as you say yes, it'll give you rehabbers all in your area. If you don't say yes, you may wind up on the other side of the state. So you want to say yes to them using your location. They'll give you a list of people and the animals they rehab, so it gets you in the right place. You want to be sure of what you have. Anytime you call ARC, the first thing we ask you for is a picture. Always take a picture, because people get confused sometimes, especially with babies. They're little, sometimes it's hard to tell. I've been told, yeah, I have a squirrel. They send me a picture. I say, no, that's a baby raccoon, newborn. It's hard. So a picture is worth 1,000 words. It also tells us the condition of the animal. So it's better to always take a picture and send that to no matter who you're contacting. Most rehabbers will ask for a picture. All right, any other questions?
One question in the chat, she answered it about rabies.
Yes, we have a few more questions. if
In
you can
North
hear me.
Carolina, like was mentioned, you need to be licensed. And the way they set up their schooling now, well, they don't school you, but you have to apprentice for 1 year with a mentor, a licensed rehabber of 3 years. And then once you mentor for a year with a licensed rehabber, then you're eligible to get your rehab permit. All right.
To end, if you are, since we are the North Carolina Wildlife Federation and we are encouraging wildlife friendly habitats, if you wanted to attract opossums to your yard, they need food and water, a food source, of course, water source. And then there are some building sort of a den box or a place that they might find that's safe and secure and dark, that they might happen upon is a way to encourage them to come if you're wanting them to come into your yard to produce, nice habitat for them. So thank you for considering these really sweet creatures, and I hope you enjoyed our talk and found some good information.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, so.
And then before you leave, please stop by. We'll look at these skulls and compare the opossum skull to the mammals, the reptilian skulls, and you'll see the difference in the size of the brain and the definition.
Yeah, so we're going to end our online portion right now. And we want to thank everybody for being here.
Hey,
with us
Donna,
and apologize for our
me?
technical
Oh, shoot.
difficulties, but you'd think we'd have it all figured out, but we always find new challenges. So thank you anyway, and we will see you next month.